What's up, YouTube? I'm Mike, and today I decided finally to shoot the video detailing how I met my wife. So it's kind of an interesting story, like the rest of my life apparently. My wife and I just celebrated, well, we didn't really celebrate, but on New Year's Eve of this year was the 17th anniversary of the day we met. So I met her on New Year's Eve 17 years ago at my apartment when I used to be married to my ex-wife. She was brought to my apartment by a certain person, and that's how we first met. And so we knew each other, we basically knew each other for 17 years. I had relatively frequent contact with her, really for a large portion of that time. That we would have, kind of stints where we saw each other pretty frequently, and then we might go a period of time without seeing each other. Obviously, we didn't see each other for 2 years during my incarceration, which actually is when she was kind of a pivotal person in my life. So I'm going to give you some background before I give you the reveal, okay? So when I met Sarah, my wife, she was a fundamentalist Christian. She was attending a Bible church that she'd been attending. I don't know if she went to one particular Bible church for the majority of her life until she, later into adulthood, she transitioned to a new church away from her family, but I guess when they moved away. But so when we met, I was basically a militant atheist, and she was a fundamentalist Christian. So let me frame this for those of you who don't fully understand what a fundamentalist Christian is. Her worldview was that she believed in that the Bible was an inerrant text, meaning every single word of that book was God-breathed, that everything, and that it was to be taken purely literally. So a true fundamentalist Christian is one of these Christians who believes that you can date the earth by going to, I think it's Genesis, where they basically mark out, like they explain all of the tribes of Judah and how Adam, led to so-and-so, who led to so-and-so, begat so-and-so, and then they calculate out the total number of years from Adam to this later date to the current period. And that's why fundamentalist Christians believe that the earth is, give or take, 6,000 years old, which is fucking staggering to most of the rest of us who believe in, crazy shit like carbon dating and fucking dinosaurs and all kinds of shit. And so as it pertains to dinosaurs, there's actually some interesting viewpoints within sort of what some of us call the fundy Christian movement. And she may take exception to this, so dear, if you do, chime in. Some fundamentalist Christians believe that dinosaurs and man walk the earth together. Okay? So they reject the carbon dating of the dinosaur bones and everything that has ever been carbon dated, apparently. It's interesting, though. I think they do accept carbon dating as it pertains to, evidence in a murder. That seems to be good. But they don't accept the carbon dating when it pertains to the age of the earth, fossils, etc. So some fundamentalist Christians believe that man and dinosaurs walked the earth together. And then I believe my wife was of the variety which believes in what they call an intact creation. So that basically when God created the earth, he created it with the dinosaur bones already there. Correct?
Yes.
That's what she believed. For 27 plus fucking years, 33 years, her belief was that the earth was 6,000 years old and that dinosaurs never actually lived on earth. Their bones were just already in the earth. That's the way that God created the earth.
Created a mature earth.
He created a mature earth. What the fuck that means. So every jot and tittle of the Bible, they believe in totally literally. It's not up to interpretation. And so what about the Holy Communion?
We believe that it was. We didn't believe that it became that you ate a cracker.
Okay. So she did not believe in what's called transfiguration. Transfiguration is the idea that the cracker literally becomes the body of Christ. I believe that's what Catholics believe. People who believe in transfiguration believe that when the priest blesses the cracker, it literally becomes the flesh of Christ. And then some people, the various faiths believe different things. The majority of the Protestant faiths believe that communion is symbolic. For example, the church that I went to was the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod Lutheran Church. And their quote was that the body of Christ was present in and under the bread or the wafer or whatever. I'm just quoting you. The body of Christ was present in and under, but did not become it. So she believed in baptism by immersion, and they believed that you could only be, they did not believe in infant baptism. So they believed in what was called the age of accountability, which meant that in order to have a saving faith in Christ, you had to profess this faith of your own free will, and you had to know what you had to understand what you were professing to believe in. And according to her, she accepted Christ when she was 4 years old. So, wow. So at 4 years old, she had enough of a working understanding of the cosmos, apparently, which of course you don't have to have because you just have to believe in the Bible. But she accepted Christ at the age of 4, and in her church, that was considered to be an accepted, that she understood. She was able to display that she understood what she was accepting. And so, for the duration of the early point that I knew her, she didn't really drink. She certainly didn't drink or didn't drive or break any kind of laws. Real strong, typical, conservative moral compass. When you believe the earth is 6,000 years old and that you are to adhere to all of God's commandments, this is about as conservative as it gets. To give you another example of some of the things that she was taught that have actually wreaked massive havoc in our sex life as adults, is that she was taught as a child that she as a woman was responsible for the sins committed by men. That she could, through her own behavior, actually cause a man to sin. So she was trained to believe that she should never basically be sexy. That she should never comport herself in such a way that it might accidentally turn a man on, because if she was the cause of that, if she did something to arouse him, then she had caused him to sin. Just really fucking catastrophic. It's unfortunate. She's had to do a tremendous amount of work to unfuck just what I consider to be child abuse. So there's Christians in my audience who probably feel like I'm abusing my children, and I feel like my wife was the victim of some of the most heinous child abuse on earth, because it was abuse of the mind. it basically hamstrung her ability to have, creative thought, analytical thought, because when you believe in an inerrant text in the Bible, you are basically trained to not ask questions. Everything just becomes a matter of faith. And so if you are struggling to cope with something, if you're struggling to understand something, that's really just a sign of your poor faith or your lack of faith. So everything just lands on you. And if you start asking too many questions, then this becomes a negative reflection of you and your lacking faith in the gospel, in the word that was given through the prophets and through Jesus and Paul, etc. So this was the condition that she existed in until the day that she was married to her first husband. She got married for the first time at 27 years old, and this is her claim. I have no way to disprove it. For me, it's just like fucking impossible to believe. But I mean, when you take everything into consideration, I guess maybe I should believe it. But she claims that when she was married the first time at 27, that she was a 27-year-old virgin. Not only was she a 27-year-old virgin, but she was so pure, in fact, that she had never even masturbated in life. Ever. In fact, she was trained to kind of abstain from any behavior that could possibly create arousal states in her. So that was one of the things that was really hard for me to believe. Like, when I first found out when she first told me that she was a 27-year-old virgin, I just immediately called bullshit. Because I'm like, there's just no way. This is impossible. Like, you just cannot. 27 years? And then she's like, well, I never even masturbated. I'm like, okay, now I know you're a fucking lunatic. Like, girls figure out that there's sensitivity to their parts in any number of fucking ways, it's just exposed, like little girls figure this out. Like, it could be in the shower, it could be a stuffed animal, it could be, straddling somebody's leg. I mean, any contact with the area could connect the fucking nerve endings to the brain and go, holy shit, there's like some kind of sensitivity there. But when you are abused, which is what I call it, when you are trained by your parents to view this sensation as in and of itself sinful, the brain is a very powerful organ. And it can literally sever connections in the body, or it can change the way it views connections in the body. This is how fetishes actually occur. Like, this is how people can learn to be aroused from pain. They can but she's doing, if y'all can hear that, she's doing dishes, so ignore it. They can rewire sort of their brains to view pain as pleasure, to view, humiliation as pleasure. There's all kinds of fetishistic behavior where a person derives sexual pleasure from something that is generally either bad, hurtful, embarrassing, or whatever, or is mundane. And so in the same way that you can make something that is innately not sexual, you can clearly sort of desensitize yourself to things that the vast majority of society would say were sexual stimuli. And so, of course, as you can probably imagine, this type of an upbringing and this type of lack of connection with her body ended up causing catastrophic sexual problems in her first marriage. She was basically, she suffered from anorgasmia, and she basically could not function sexually. She has undergone a lot of therapy in her life. She's undergone a lot of medical procedures. Like, I'm not going to share all of the shit that she's been through, but she's been through a lot. It is, in my estimation, and I think she may have even mentioned that one of her doctors suggested this, is that she actually experienced vaginal atrophy. So in the same way that, like, let's say you break your leg and your leg is immobilized, like with pins or something, and so you're never using a muscle, over time the muscle will atrophy. It will start to shrink and become unfunctional because there's no stimulus going to it. The brain is never firing those connections and making the muscle flex. And so you rapidly lose muscle volume and all there's all kinds of things, which is why people they've now figured out that when a person has a broken limb, they try to find ways to still be able to move the limb as best as possible to prevent atrophy. And so when you have a vagina and a clitoris that are evolutionarily created with a purpose, and then you basically psychologically sever the ties to those organs and you never use them, they're kind of like muscles. They just sort of shut down. And so she had really no experience with arousal state. So her body didn't self-lubricate. There's just this whole host of fucking problems that she had. And this led to major dysfunction in her marriage. As you can imagine, she lived not in a sexless marriage, but in a marriage where sex was very rare, and at a bare minimum, it was rare to almost never successful. It was never enjoyable for her. So it was regularly painful. Like, that was the overwhelming majority of the problem, was that it was just always painful. And so again, I'm not getting into all of the details about what she went through trying to rectify this, but rest assured to say it was a lot. And so I didn't know any of these things for the majority of the time that I knew her. It was sort of midway through our relationship where her husband made this information known to me. And so that really kind of brings us, there's only so far that I can dodge confessing the reality. And I, like so many other things on my channel, I'm being honest with you about how a particular situation occurred. I'm not proud of this, but it is the truth. And that's what I'm committed to sharing with you to the best of my ability. The reason that I was made aware of the sexual problems that she was having with her husband, her previous husband, is because he was a friend of mine. He was actually my best friend, like, in life. So we met when we were in second grade. And at this time, when I began to understand on some level the nature of her dysfunction, or in the dysfunction in their marriage, I was in my 30s. So we had been friends for basically our entire lives. He was really my only real friend. So when I tell you this guy was my best friend, like, in every conceivable sense of that word, he was really my best and only friend. And so I was around her quite a bit because I would routinely go to see my friend, and she was there. So as you can imagine, knowing my character, and the person that you see on this camera now almost every day is not far from the person that I was when I was first around Sarah. So here on the one hand, you have this fundamentalist Christian with one of the most finely tuned moral compasses the world has ever known. 27-year-old virgin who never masturbated, and she's exposed to her husband's best friend, who could really not, you'd really be hard pressed to find a person that was more fucking polar opposite her than me. And so quite naturally, she fucking despised me with every breath that she took. She did not want me to be friends with her husband. She felt that I was a horrible friend to him, that I was a horrible influence upon him. And I think she probably blamed me for a lot of their problems, in the sense that I was certainly not helping him with any of his faith struggles. So not only was I not helping in any way with his lack of faith, like I was never going to be an ally in bringing him closer to his wife, so that they could share their, a common belief. I was also not at all helpful with their marriage, because once I got intimately acquainted with her history and her belief systems and the nature of their sexual dysfunction, and how much had been attempted to rectify it, and what a failure that had all been. I mean, I was just actively telling this guy, like, dude, you've either A, got to leave this girl, or at a bare minimum, you have every reason to cheat. I mean, if there's ever been a man on this earth that had reason to cheat on his wife, it had to be this guy. Like, it was just a lot, okay? And so, at least that was my point of view at the time. My point of view changed, but at the time, I held her totally responsible for basically, being a terrible wife and causing my friend no end of suffering. And so I was certainly not helping in any way to help them maintain their relationship. So she and I basically went on in this state where, I didn't like her, she didn't like me. We would get to bickering when we were hanging out together, and it was just what it is, So but I was this guy's best friend. I was really his closest friend and his confidant, and so he always had me around, and so because of that, I was around Sarah. And so at some point, I had kids of my own, and Sarah was at the time a speech language pathologist. She was working with children, so she had no intentions of having children of her own. Neither of them intended to have their own kids, but she loved kids and she worked with kids. And so, she came to meet my kids when they were born, and, and had limited access to them when they were young. And she knew my wife, and sometimes we would all hang out together, and so, it was one big happy friend group, right? And then, unfortunately, all of the events that I detailed in my What It's Like standing, 12 years of jury trial took place. But right before that, they had been dating for a long while in the beginning of their relationship. And then, my best friend had actually asked me to be the best man at his wedding to Sarah. When he got married to Sarah, he had asked me to be his best man. And I was living in Seattle with my ex at the time, and I'm terrified of planes. I've never been on an airplane before. And so despite the fact that we were friends for 27 years, I was just like, sorry, bro, I can't do it. Like, I just can't do it, man. I'm not flying to Dallas to be in your fucking wedding. I'm not risking it. He was very hurt by this, and it ended up not mattering because I was incarcerated by the time that they actually got married. Otherwise, I would have been the best man at her wedding. So I went to prison, and while I was in prison, I found Jesus. Locked in a prison cell 23 hours a day for an extended period of time with access to nothing but a Bible. I picked it up and started reading, and had a very common experience that happens in prison. I found Jesus in a major way. I read the Bible cover to cover 2 times while I was in prison. I read the entire New King James Version of the Bible, and then I read the Bible for a second time in the New International Version, which is actually on my bed right here. This Bible right here, that I read, which was my second reading of the text, was a gift to me while I was in prison. And the person who purchased this Bible for me while I was in prison was Sarah. Wow. So the book that I studied on a near daily fucking basis, that, like I said, if you look through this, you will not find a page in this entire book that is not underlined or marked or something. Like, I poured myself into this book that she sent me to read while I was in prison. And so when I got out of prison, suddenly she and I had something in common. And so when I would go hang out at their house, rather than being the atheist and the Christian, where he was also an atheist, he was really more of an agnostic. He really didn't know what the fuck he believed, I don't think. I think that he didn't believe in God, but he didn't really, he wasn't as hardcore in his lack of faith that I was, because see, I wasn't really raised in a Christian home. My parents were those, like, my mom was a Methodist and my dad was a Presbyterian, and we went to church, like on Christmas and Easter, like at a maximum. So they didn't know what the fuck. It's just like the typical, a lot of people are that way. They like claim to be Christians, but they don't read the Bible, they don't go to church. They think, well, John 3:16, it's all it takes. And so when I got out of prison, I was basically a Bible church kind of guy, because I had actually read this text in its entirety twice, cover to cover, and then I had just studied the New Testament I cannot tell you the volumes, the number of hours I spent reading this book. And so when I got out of prison, every time I was going to my best friend's house and sitting around having these conversations with he and his wife, now this dynamic's totally fucking changed. And so we can sit there for hours and talk scripture and talk about our faiths. And I was like this new Christian. And so, she was kind of like the mature Christians. She'd seen guys like me come and go and get the fire of the Holy Spirit for a while and then die down. And so, but it began to change our relationship. And so for the first time, we kind of started seeing each other in a different light. But it didn't really matter, because she was married to my best friend, and I was married at the time. Actually, I wasn't technically married, but I was living with my ex-wife. That's something that hasn't been revealed yet in some of my other videos. So there's a big spoiler there. I actually ended up living with the girl who basically sent me to prison for 2 years. We ended up getting back together after I got out of prison. So that's coming. If you haven't seen my other videos on prison and fucking trial, man, there's a lot of shit left to come. So Sarah and I's relationship started changing up until the point that my ex-wife, the mother of my two boys, we were not doing good. We had not been doing good for a long time. And I had finally, after breakup and get back and breakup and get back and breakup and get back, I had decided, like, I finally was ready to let my balls drop, and I was done with this girl. And I told her, I said, look, I want you out of my life. You're a toxic bitch, but I'm not going to just abandon you. That's not going to work, okay? That's why we keep ending up back together, is I kick you out, you don't really have any place to go, and I worry about the welfare of my kids, and honestly, like, I start wanting some pussy, and it's like, might as well get it from her, and so she comes back over, and then we start fucking again, and then we're back together. And I'm sure millions of you have been through this type of situation. So I finally had enough, and I said, look, I need you to get a job. I want you to get a job while you're living here. I'll let you keep living with me, and I'm going to keep paying all the bills for 6 months, or as long as it takes. Well, not up to 6 months. And I want you to save every dime that you make so that you can get an apartment. I was living in this like little duplex, and there was an apartment complex right down the street. I said, you need to save up some money, and I'll give you some money, and you need to get an apartment down the street, and we will just co-parent the children. So I'll, you know, if you're working, I'm working, whatever, I'll help you get them to and from daycare, to and from school. We will co-parent, but this relationship is over. I'm done living this way. I'm not putting up with it anymore. And she said, okay. And she started working, and she saved up like $400 fucking dollars. And next thing I know, she bought a fucking dog. She bought a Papillon, of all things. You know what a Papillon? Look up Papillon. It's like Papillon, I think. Fucking yapping ass dog. So she buys this Papillon instead of getting an apartment, and then one lo and behold, one weekend, early morning, me and my son are playing Zelda, and she starts like getting all dressed like she's gonna go somewhere, and she says she's leaving. I'm like, where the fuck are you going? She's like, I'm gonna go see my dad, I think it was. And I'm like, okay. And she says to my son, hey, Adam, you know, come on, we're gonna go see Grandpa. And he's like, no, I don't want to go. I'm like, fuck him. They didn't have any relationship with her dad at all, which was weird, but I didn't care because I was trying to get rid of her. And so I wasn't even arguing it. My son didn't want to go. And she's like, well, you have to. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. You know, fuck off, beat feet. Like, he wants to stay here with me. And so she runs and she grabs him, she picks him up, and she takes off and she leaves. She just bounces. This is really story for another video. I may make an entire video on this, but she left, took both of my kids against my will, fucking disappeared. I didn't see my kids for 6 months. I didn't even know where they were. I had to hire a private investigator to track her down. So like I said, we'll get to that in another video. But this, her leaving ultimately led to our final separation. And within the next 6 months, she had basically given up being a mother, and she brought the boys home to me under the guise that she was going to be moving back to Dallas and trying to get a job here because she'd been living in Oklahoma is where I tracked her down to. And it was a lie. She'd actually met a guy up there who was worth $7 million. He was like the CEO of some trucking company. It was like a family business, and he was a multi-millionaire. Guy had like 250 acres, fucking mansion, couple of Porsches. He had a shit ton of money. And this guy told her that she could be with him, but not with the kids. He wanted no part of her fucking kids. So this bitch, my ex-wife, sent me to prison for 2 years, brought the kids home to me, and abandoned them in my care. She just brought them home, pretended like she was staying, and then I sent her to the grocery store to get groceries. She came home that night. She only bought like 2 or 3 of the items, and she said to me, "What would you say if I said I'm gonna leave the kids with you?" And I said, "Fucking kick rocks." That's what I would say to you. And she was like, "Oh really? You're prepared for that?" And I said, "No, I'm not fucking prepared for it, but I'll figure it out." And that's what she did. She hugged both my kids goodbye. My youngest son was hanging on to her ankle crying, "Mommy, please don't leave." And she drug him down the hall crying, attached to her ankle, and got in her car and went to drive away. And I'm not proud of this either, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Watching her break my kid's heart like that, I was convinced that she was the most evil person that had ever walked face the earth. And I walked out to her car right before she was driving away. She rolled the window down, and I said, "The best thing that you could do for yourself and these boys and this planet is to crash this car into a fucking ditch." And she was like, "Ah!" She rolled the window and fucking left. And so that's how I came to be a single father of 2 boys, which I had them for about 6 months on my own. I was a single father for about 6 months on my own. And during that time period, I uncovered the depths of my oldest son's learning disability, which he unfortunately inherited from his mother. So let this be a lesson to any of you young guys who are watching my channel. If you meet a beautiful young girl when you're in your teens, your early 20s, and she's dumb as a box of fucking rocks, And you're like, who cares? She's beautiful. She's hot. Like, I don't need my girl to be smart. You know, she's really pretty. Do not fall for that shit. Because if you have children with this girl, you are risking passing on her abject stupidity to one of your kids. And that's what happened to my son. She had a learning disability. I was unaware of this. Didn't care. She looked cute. She just was young and ditzy, and she couldn't read a map, and she didn't know how to use tampons. But it was like, I don't know. I didn't care. I was in my 20s. I was just chasing pussy. And so when I became a single father, all of a sudden the full job landed on my shoulders. Now I'm going to parent-teacher conferences, PTA meet. Well, not so much PTA, but like I'm having to be hands-on, one-on-one with my son at his school, and he's got all kinds of learning delays. And so he's struggling in kindergarten, and so he's getting into arguments and fights with other kids. And I'm at the school every week with these parent-teacher conferences with his kindergarten teacher, trying to unfuck this situation, which I'm totally unequipped for. You guys, you know me, man. Can you imagine me raising kids by myself? I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I had a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. My youngest was in diapers. I potty trained my baby boy as a single father with no knowledge of raising kids. Like, I was the breadwinner. My wife did all the child rearing, our whole marriage. Like, I did none of that. I changed 3 diapers for both of my kids when they were real young. Like, she did all the child rearing. I did all the bringing home the bacon. We had that type of fucking marriage. And so all of a sudden, bam, I'm single dad. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And so Sarah starts helping out. And so my son's having all these struggles at school, and she's a speech pathologist, and she works with kids that have learning delays and speech delays and stuff. And so she says, actually, I think it was my best friend who suggested it. He said, hey, maybe you could help, Mike out. You could see his son and see if you can't help him bridge some of the gaps. He was struggling with reading is what it was really, really all about in the beginning in kindergarten. And so Sarah says, okay. She asked me, she said, I'll do it totally pro bono. You guys come up the office a couple times a week, and I'll take some of the pressure off you. You got a lot on your plate. And I'll take some of the pressure off you, and I'll kind of help. I'll basically do his homework with him, and I'll kind of take over the education half of this job so that you can, save some sanity. You guys don't have to be fighting over his schoolwork. Let me kind of work through that with him. And then, you can do dad the rest of the way. And so I'm like, great. Like, fucking throw me a fucking life preserver. I'm fucking drowning over here. And so that's what happened. So we start going to see Sarah a couple times a week. And that's when things started to change. Because here I am, a single father, and I am drowning under the weight of this job. I'm trying to go to work. I'm getting up in the morning. I'm taking one kid to daycare. I'm taking the other kid to school. That I'm going to work. That I'm coming home, picking up one from daycare, one from school, go home, try to do homework, try to cook dinner, try to have playtime, keep the house clean. Dude, I hadn't been doing any of this shit. My life up until the point where my wife abandoned these kids was I went to work, I came home, I played video games. I didn't do fuck all. I didn't clean the house. I didn't cook dinners. I didn't take care of babies. I had zero experience with this. And now I'm driving to school, pickups, cooking, cleaning, shopping, potty training. Dude, I'm losing my shit over here. But I'm committed. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And then I start going to see Sarah, and I see this woman loving my children. You know what I mean? Fucks with you, dude. I see this woman loving my children in a way their own mother couldn't. And it just hits you in the heart. Like, how can you not start to have feelings for this person? And so now I'm in this like this intimate environment with her for 2 hours a week in this little therapy room. One thing leads to another, and her husband was in traveling sales, so he'd be gone for like 3 weeks at a time. Like, he'd be gone a lot. She'd just be at home by herself all the time. And so at the end of our therapy session, she didn't have anybody to go home to. And so sometimes I just hang out. We would just talk. We would just became close friends, and we would talk. And I have this other little thing. I have a foot fetish. And I remember one day I was sitting in therapy. She's working with my son, and they're doing sight words. And she's got these little pumps on, these heels. And she's kind of got her legs, she's kind of sitting on her legs like girls do, and she's kind of got her foot out to the side, and she kind of kicks this shoe off. She's got little painted toenails, and her foot's kind of dangling there, and I'm looking at this foot, and it feels kind of intimate, If you got a foot fetish, you see a girl's bare feet, and it almost feels like you're looking at a titty. It feels like you're looking at, when you have a foot fetish, feet are sexual objects. Girls don't understand that. You take your shoes off in front of a man with a foot fetish, you might as well have just taken your top off. And so, all of a sudden, I start getting some different kind of feelings. And this is the first time I've ever looked at her this way. Up until now, I had never viewed her sexually in any way. She was my best friend's wife. It's just like, it's just like a kid, it's just like, I'm not a pedophile. I'm just not a person who sleeps with my best friend's wife. There's just like a barrier there that you just don't cross. The thought doesn't even enter your head. But now we're in this intimate environment, and I see this, and I start having some reactions to what I'm seeing, and I start to feel guilty about it. And so the next day, I call my best friend up, and I said, hey, dude, I just want to talk to you about this therapy that Sarah and I have been doing, are you sure you're okay with this? And he's like, yeah, like, why not? And I was like, this is a really intimate environment, that we have there. And like I said, they've been having all these sexual problems. Like, they were having like no sex. And this dude literally says to me on the phone, he's like, yeah, I'm cool, man. It's like, not like you could fuck her anyway. And for the first time, him talking negative about her like that, it hit me in a different way. So for all these years that I've been basically telling this guy he should be cheating on his wife because she was all damaged and fucking broken and not worth his time, now I had started to see her in a different light. I had started to see her as a human being. And I had started to develop this affinity for her that I didn't even really realize how far I had gone at that point. And when he said that shit to me, it fucking pissed me off. And I kind of took it like a challenge, honestly. It's like, oh really, huh? I couldn't fuck her, huh? All right. And so literally, there was like a change in me when he said that. I was like, okay, cool. That was it. And so from that point on, shit started really changing. I stopped caring about the fact that I was having feelings for somebody that should have been off limits. I'm not justifying what I did. I'm not saying that he was wrong. He should have been able to trust me implicitly. He should have had zero concern that he could not trust his wife and his best friend to be alone in a room together. I should have been a better friend, but I was not. I'm not a good friend. I am the kind of guy who looks out for me fucking first. And I had developed feelings for her, and I didn't know the full scope of them until he said that. And so one thing leads to another. We keep getting closer and closer and closer. And I think she probably started feeling it at some point. I don't know. Like, she'd have to talk about that. But I kept kind of getting closer and closer and closer to her until it was her birthday. And she had invited me over, and we all went out to this kind of country bar. It's like a dance club. And we went out with a bunch of their friends, and so it was me and him and her and this other couple. I think it was at least one, maybe two other couples. So we're all hanging out, and by this time, guys, like I admit, like I'm smitten. Like I've fallen for her, full bore, and so I'm actually kind of like really hoping like maybe I'm gonna sneak a dance in tonight. And so we're all hanging out and talking, and her husband starts getting really fucking drunk. Like, I mean, real fucking drunk. And so, Sarah asks at some point, she asks her husband, she's like, hey, could Mike and I have a dance? And he's like, yeah, whatever, go on. I couldn't figure out why he was so dismissive. And so we danced together, you know, no big deal, like just a dance. But it was a big deal to me. You know, and the fact that she asked for it, like I took that as a cue. You know what I mean? And so we're dancing, we're having a good time, and he watches it and he doesn't seem to be bothered by it. He comes over to me and he tells me something like that he's got like a major hard-on for this other guy's wife. This other couple that's there, he's actually flirting with that guy's wife. And so now, like, I'm in full piece of shit mode. Because I've fallen for her. I'm supposed to be his best friend. He's supposed to be able to tell me this kind of shit and be able to trust me to keep it inside. But when he told me that he was basically trying to cheat on his wife, who I'm now basically in love with, that just pissed me off even more. Made me feel like he didn't really care about her at all. And so I used that as another fucking excuse to push the envelope. I don't think I told her that he did that night, but that was basically it was one of the final straws. And so when he did that, it was like that second like excuse, like okay, fuck this dude. And so he commences to get so drunk that he's outside vomiting in the bushes. And so I was the chauffeur that night. And so I take them home to their house, and he's like in the bedroom puking and trying to go to sleep, and it's her birthday. She's kind of pissed off that he got all fucked up on her birthday and is like trying to shorten the night with his bullshit. And she's kind of like, fuck you, go to bed. And so we keep hanging out in the living room, keep the party going. Well, just so happens that the night before her birthday party, I had a dream about her. I can't remember the exact details of the dream, but basically it was something like in this dream, we were in a house somewhere together, and she had kind of walked by me, I think, and I had reached out and grabbed her arm and kind of like pulled her over to me, and then like just like leaned in and kissed her for the first time. And so I'm so pissed off about the way he's like literally trying to fuck some other girl who's also married behind his wife's back, and he's bragging to me about it, that I now feel like I have a license to be a piece of shit. And so we're sitting on this couch together, just she and I'm like, I kind of got this secret that I want to tell you. And she's like, okay. And I was like, I had this dream. And she's not really expecting this, so she's not really putting the pieces together as I start describing that I had this dream about grabbing this girl by the hand that I'm not supposed to be having a relationship with, and how I pulled her over and started making out with her. And she's drunk too, you know, and suddenly she goes, oh my God, like this dream's about me. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And what she should have fucking did was jumped right up off that fucking couch and been like, you are a piece of shit. Get the fuck out of my house. I'm going to tell my husband. What the fuck is wrong with you? But she didn't do that. That's not what she did. She kind of just rolled with it. It was like, oh, wow, you know. And so now I have now, like, shots are fired. You know what I mean? Like, I've kind of made my move. I have let her know, like, I have feelings for you. And so he's coming and going from the bedroom. He's basically starts trying to shut it down. And so I leave, and he goes out of town, I think it was. And
I did tell him the next morning.
she says she did tell him the next morning that I had said that.
He was totally dismissive.
And that he totally dismissed it. So she confessed the next morning that I had admitted that I had a romantic dream. Sorry, I got cock blocked by my fucking camera again. So as I was saying, so she confessed to him the following morning that I had basically made a move on her, and he just totally dismissed it. Like he did not see me as a threat. He basically just thought like there's no chance anything's gonna happen between them. Maybe he didn't give a shit, honestly. I mean, he was just literally trying to fuck another girl the night before. So maybe to some degree he didn't care. I don't know. I mean, but he dismissed it one way or the other, which is really a bad move. So when I find out that he's just totally dismissive of me, it's like, again, this is more license. And so he goes out of town. Their relationship has been in shambles for a while. They had been through marital counseling, you name it. They were holding on by a thread. In fact, I think it was she that had made a claim to him basically within 6 months of this whole thing popping off. One of them had made the claim that their marriage was ripe for an affair. She did. She had basically said this marriage is ripe for an affair. So anyway, so he goes back out of town. I go back into the therapy setting with Sarah. And now that I've already uncorked this, I start becoming very aggressive in my pursuit of her. And so when we're in the therapy room, I'm like trying to get more and more of her time. We're hanging out after hours. We're talking, and things are rapidly becoming more and more inappropriate. Now, she didn't do anything physical. Like, I tried hard. She didn't kiss me. Like, there was a couple of times where I literally was trying to like push her into physicality, and I kind of backed her into a corner in her office and like had my hands like on either side of her and was like trying to kiss her. But like I wasn't trying to be like a rapist, you know, like I wanted her to consent, and she wouldn't consent, and so I didn't push the envelope. But it was like there was a lot of that kind of tension where I'm like in your grill, like, you know, face to face, and she's like pulling away like, no, we can't. So she had resisted all of my physical advances, and then one thing leads to another, and we start having more and more communication. I start texting her first thing every morning. We start communicating on by phone at night, because like I said, he would be out of town sometimes for several weeks on end. And in fact, that's what did happen right before everything really popped off. I think he had gone out of town for like 3 weeks. And so, like, I'm like unhinged. I at this point, I am making no efforts. Like, I am on Facebook just posting love songs to my feed, one after the other. I'm posting all of these messages because I know she's tracking everything that I'm posting. She knows I'm like acting like I have a secret lover or a secret love interest on Facebook, and all these, like, some of my cousins, like, who are you saying all this to, basically? I'm making all of these open-ended statements and posting all of these loves. I'm just like a full frontal assault on Facebook. We start talking on the phone. We will talk on the phone all night long, like all night, to the point she's getting up and she's going to work on no sleep, and she's trying to take like power naps for like 15 to 30 minutes in between clients. We're both all strung out, and it just keeps progressing more and more into one night on the phone. I had actually been sharing a sexual story about my ex-wife and this like threesome that we'd had, and it's a titillating story, and she's gonna be mad that I said this probably. She started masturbating on the phone. Sarah did. So that was the only thing. Like that was at that point, that was the pivot point. So like basically we had phone sex because she had gotten worked up by all of our conversation, our interactions and everything, and she had started masturbating while I was telling the story, and then she like confessed that she was doing it, and then at that point it was off to the fucking races. And so I keep pushing for something, and she's resisting every other advance beyond that one particular event. And then he comes back into town. And I'm like, no, this is fucked. And I actually went over to their house once, and when he was there, and this happened probably more than once, honestly, but there was a particular point where by this time we were fully engaged in basically at bare minimum an emotional affair, one that had been sexual. There was sexual talk, there was phone sex, and then here he is sitting on the patio. We're all three hanging out. She's bringing him beers, and and I'm like, dude, I'm not doing this. Like, fuck this. Like, I'm not playing wingman. And so I was leaving that night, and she walked out. Like, I'd walked all the way out to my car. I was standing on the curb, and she got up from the table, and she walked all the way out from the table where we were sitting, and she gave me a big hug, like right in front of him. And so I'm hugging her and looking over her shoulder, and he and I are making eye contact, and there seemed to be a knowing. And again, it was just like lights. Again, it was just like he didn't do anything about it. He dismissed it. There were some other events that don't really matter, but because this has gone way fucking longer than I thought. Probably buried you guys in more detail than you could possibly give a shit about. But basically, the last two events that occurred was I told her the next day, like, this is not okay. I'm not gonna be the guy on the side. I'm not gonna we're not gonna play at this little romantic game for 3 fucking weeks like we're basically dating, and then I have to see you with your husband. I'm not fucking going for that. And they had an anniversary already booked and planned. I forget where they went, Hawaii or Los Angeles or something. What? LA. And she basically said, look, she was undecided about what she wanted to do, and she said, I'm gonna go on we had this already booked, and I'm gonna go on my anniversary, and he and I are gonna take this time alone so that I can figure out where my feelings are at, and then we're gonna go from there. And so honestly, it pissed me the fuck off. Like, it hurt, honestly, because like, I've already fallen for this girl. I have all these feelings for this girl, and we're playing Harriet and Ozzy for the whole fucking 3-week period, and then all of a sudden he's back, and now I'm having to cope with this shit. And they're on their anniversary, so I know there's gonna be sex involved, which it just feels like cheating, honestly. But at the same time, like, I'm the guy on the side. She's married. I knew what I was buying into, but it didn't make it hurt any less. And so I'm very stressed for the weekend. I think they were gone. And I'll never forget, I was actually coaching my son's baseball team, and I get this phone call from her on the day that she was either leaving to come back or she had gotten back. And so I pick up this phone, and I know I'm getting ready to get the answer. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but basically it's you. I pick you. And I was just like so fucking overjoyed and excited. And it's like, okay, when, now what? And she wouldn't give me any details. She's like, I got to figure it out. But like, it's you. You're the person I want to be with. I'm done. And I'm like pushing, like, okay, when is this going to happen? And because I don't want them going back and living together again. And so it just so happens that if my timeline is correct, they came back from their anniversary, and he like left very quickly after that to go out of town again. And I had kept pushing her because I wanted her gone. And she didn't tell me that she had already committed to leaving him. and she was in the process of it. And so I kind of like had a meltdown, I think, and kind of like pushed, like, what the fuck, you know, I told you I'm not gonna, you know, play second fiddle. And she finally was like, my house is in boxes right now. Like right now, my shit's in boxes. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, you can come over here. And so I literally went over to their house and helped her finish boxing up all her shit and helped her move it out into her car. And she fucking left him while he was gone on vacation, moved in with her parents, and he came home to a fucking empty house. And that is how I met my wife and how our relationship began.
5-week period, beginning to end.
What?
It was 5 weeks from the time you told me you liked me on my birthday to the day that I left.
She says it was a 5-week period from the time, from her birthday when I told her that I liked her. And then everything started to unfold. It was 5 weeks from the day that I told her that to the day that she left. So while there was some pain for me involved, like, she did not fuck around. You know, she did not play both sides of the fence. She didn't play games with my heart. She didn't, you know, what we did was dirt. We did some straight up fucking dirt. But neither of us unnecessarily dragged this out. And I remember, I think one of the famous quotes from the whole thing, which really, I think I'll just end with this statement. When he came home and found out that she was gone, he had called her on the phone and was like, you know, what's going on? And, you know, she said that she was leaving. And I think he said something like, is it another guy? And I don't remember what she said. And he was like, please just don't let it be Mike. And she's like, it's Mike. I don't know whether he was more upset about losing his wife or losing his best friend, honestly. And in all seriousness, I hope he's not watching this video. I hope he's not. But if you are, I hope you're doing okay, man. I really do. I'm sorry for what we did, because it was shitty. I love this girl with every ounce of my heart. And we've had a rocky ride since you guys broke up. But it was, what we did was not for nothing. And we have a beautiful daughter. And we have a beautiful life together. Despite all of its flaws, we have a beautiful life together. And I hope that you do too. And I hope with all my heart that this ended up being the right thing for you too. Like, I know that you and Sarah did not have a good relationship, and I hope that you found happiness in whatever you moved on to. So I know that apology doesn't mean shit, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it. So there you have it. As always, the raw truth coming from me on this channel. I'm a dirtbag piece of shit, I have to admit. I did some dirt. I've probably lost 100 fucking subscribers during the course of the emission of this video, but the world works in mysterious ways, man. I don't know what to tell you. I got a great girl, and we have a great relationship 9 times out of 10, and we have a beautiful fucking daughter and a beautiful life, and as much as we probably shouldn't have done what we did, I don't fucking regret it one single bit. So, there you have it. As always, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one.